So I just finished Oathbringer. Oathbringer is by Brandon Sanderson. It is the third book in the Stormlight Archive. And the Stormlight Archive itself is the flagship series in Brandon Sanderson's wider universe of the Cosmere that I've slowly but surely been reading through. And I've done a series where I've essentially read some, talked about it, and then made some predictions on what's going to happen next. But the start of this video, I want to have a relatively spoiler-free talk about what I really enjoyed about this book and what maybe I didn't enjoy as much. And then I'm going to move into the play-by-play and make some predictions on what I think is going to happen next and my overall reaction to the things that happened inside of this book. And the first thing I have to say is this book took me a while to read, mainly because life has been very busy, but also partly because I thought some of it was a little slow and a little bit disinteresting, and we'll get onto that section. But overall, I very much enjoyed this book, and well, I'm going to tell you the reasons why. I would say that this is probably my favorite installment of the series for a few reasons, and the first one was because of the Unmade. The Unmade were really wild cards. I truly don't understand exactly where they've come from still, and I don't think I'm supposed to, but the variety and how involved they were was so interesting. Now, we saw 3 or 4 different Unmade throughout the course of this book, and they all had completely different abilities and effects on those around them. Some were extremely cognitive and conscious about what they're doing and why they're doing it. Some of them were more just like an idea, a feeling, a force, a passion, an emotion. And what that meant is that you had no idea how the Unmade was going to have an impact on the story and how it was possible for us to kind of negate or work around the effects that they had. And I thought that brought something that was unexpectedly fun to the story. The second reason I absolutely loved this book is, of course, Dalinar. The reason I love Dalinar's story so much is because it was like a nice combination of Kaladin and Shallan's backstories, because throughout each one of these books we've had a backstory from one of our main characters. The first book was Kaladin, the second was Shallan, and now Dalinar. And Kaladin's, although there was a lot that was pretty tragic, he was a hero throughout. There were only moments where he, gave up on being the hero and his story was truly horrible and things like that. A lot of it was him just overcoming adversity, battling through, and I really saw him as a hero throughout, and then he realized he was that hero at the end as well. Shallan's was really tragic. Hers was hiding from herself, hiding from the things that she'd done, coming to terms with it, and essentially the realization of who she was and what she'd done, and coming to terms with that as a person. And Dalinar's was kind of the mixture of the two. Now, he is undeniably a hero, but for a lot and vast swathes of his journey to get here, he was pretty evil and he'd given into, or it looked like he'd given into the thrill, but really that was just who he was as a person. And he accepts his pain at the end, and we see how far he's come and the kind of changed man that he is. And it was absolutely beautiful, and following his story was terrific, and there wasn't a single moment where I was bored. Another reason I loved this book was Odium. He was so involved, and although I definitely feel like it's made him less of a scary and all-powerful power, so to speak, I do think that it was fun having him so involved and so close to the storyline and manifesting himself in a way that we can understand, and interacting with a ton of different characters. But I do think overall it detracted from his aura, but I think that what he added to the story itself was a lot of fun. Another reason I love this book was the scenes in Kholinar. And before I read this, a lot of people told me that Kholinar, that section, was a section that kind of bored them and made it a slog and made it tough for them to move through the book. But I really enjoyed that section. The reason I really enjoyed it was because it was a whole new load of mystery. We had several Unmade. We had the mystery with regards to Elokar's family, the royal family. We also had the Fused camped outside, and the rest of the Parshendi camped outside as well. We had Azure, and we didn't know who she was at the time. And it was great. It was like a brand new story inside of a story, and I really appreciate that. And there's a little bit of politicking as well, and a lot of mystery. So I loved Kholinar. What I didn't enjoy so much, which surprised me, was Shadesmar. And I think a lot of people maybe have this the other way around, but Kholinar I enjoyed. Shadesmar, I felt like there were so many mysteries unsolved throughout the course of this series and this book as well, that all of a sudden being thrown into Shadesmar was maybe just a little bit overwhelming. Like there was all of a sudden I didn't understand anything. There wasn't barely a single thing that I could understand. And it also took away a little bit of the mystery of how people are moving between worlds. And it's not confirmed that that's how they're moving between worlds, but there's so many people from a ton of different worlds just in Shadesmar that, I think it was altogether too much for me at that point in the story. And there was so much I didn't understand that it became boring. I like it when I at least understand some of what's going on so that I can work on the mysteries around me and trying to interpret them. But when you get thrown into something where everything is all of a sudden again a mystery, or on top of all these other mysteries that I've already got in my head, for me it was a little bit unenjoyable. I felt like the story was getting away from me a bit. So I was very glad when they come out of Shadesmar, and that was the section that I found it hard to move through. I wasn't very motivated to read those bits because I knew that I was working on new mysteries that were much bigger than just the planet we were on. I felt like they were, to the wider cosmos, and I just wasn't ready to start working on those. I wanted to work on the mysteries we already had, but it was pretty brief. We did learn some cool stuff. We saw some interesting things, and I'm sure that it will become more relevant as we go through. So that's the end of my relatively non-spoiler section, just talking about the book in general. Let's talk about the play-by-play, and of course I have to start with Dalinar. We rejoin Dalinar's story, and he visits Cultivation and the Night Watcher. And it's good to get, a definite that they are different beings and different creatures. And Cultivation is, of course, definitely in charge there. And something that's interesting is it seems like Dalinar is offered Nightblood during that interaction. And that raises another question. How long has Vivenna and Vasha been on this planet? Because that would suggest ages and ages and ages, years and years and years. But I suppose we kind of already knew that because of Vasha's, his position in the Alethi Crown Prince's training. Like, surely that you have to have been around for a few years for that to be able to happen. So, but then who accepted Nightblood from? I think it was the Night Watcher who offered him. So that is interesting. I'd love to know who did that. Maybe it was Zahel. Maybe Nightblood made its way across here in a different way, and Vasha managed to get a hold of him through there, or I don't know. It will be interesting to find out. And Cultivation cultivated Dalinar. She pruned his memories so that he could grow into the person he needed to be. And oh my word, she did a fantastic job. This is, as far as I know, our first real interaction with Cultivation, and it would appear that she has the foresight ability to see into the future that's at least equal to Odium's, it would seem, with her ability to just prune certain memories to allow Dalinar to become the Blackthorn and the man that he became. So very impressed with her. And so we come back to the modern day. Odium reveals himself, and Dalinar is to become Odium's champion. And I couldn't believe it. I for a second, I thought it might happen. And I was also feeling really sorry for Szeth, because Szeth had literally just pledged himself and Nightblood to Dalinar as he spoke the next ideal, like one scene before. So if Dalinar had turned and become the champion, I'd have been like, Szeth has no luck at all. But of course, Dalinar decided to accept his own pain, and instead of relinquishing it, he took it upon himself. And what that did was negated Odium's control on him, and it looks like it made him honor, if I'm not mistaken. We get like a crazy Avengers Assemble moment with Szeth and Azure and Kaladin and Shallan and Jasnah and Adolin and everybody there, including, I believe the two heralds joined them at that point as well. But either way, it was like an Avengers Assemble moment, but on steroids, which was really, really cool. And there was still so much to do at that point. So everyone goes separate ways and starts to kick butt, but Dalinar is definitely my hero from this story, and the way that he manages to capture the thrill and accept it and defeat the thrill because he understands it so well is just wow. I'm hoping that Dalinar, of course, stays a main character for us, especially now that we've had his story over the line, and amazing. I don't actually know whose story we get next. I guess it's either Szeth, Jasnah, Venli, but I feel like we've spent like a decent amount of time looking at Venli's past. I wouldn't be too excited about Venli either, if I'm honest. She's not the most fun to read. But yeah, either of those two would be fine. Maybe Szeth because he goes to Shinovar, but we'll get onto that in a minute. So on to Szeth. Him and Nightblood are just as fun as I thought they would be. However, for a little minute, I thought that Lift was going to be holding Nightblood for a while, and I think that their childish humor and the way they go about things would probably be quite fun together also. But Szeth, he does really well in this book. Like, he manages to contain Nightblood. Luckily, Dalinar kind of becomes honor at a critical period when they needed that Stormlight to be able to feed Nightblood. And it looks like Szeth is now going to go to Shinovar. What's going to happen over there, I can only guess. We don't know much about Shinovar. We know that I think that's where the humans began. I would guess that we discover many, many secrets, and we discover a lot about what's going on there. And it's all through the eyes of Szeth, who is a native and feels wronged and slighted by the way they treat him. So that's going to be fun. Rysn, she joins the story again. We get some incredible scenes with her and her Babsk. And we get the scenes where they're trying to steal, the Parshendi and friends are trying to steal this big red ruby. I think it's called the King's Drop. And they manage to get it. But we also see a little dragon start to breathe in Stormlight and get a little bit bigger and get ferocious. If that dragon went into the High Storm and just absorbed as much as it possibly could, surely it would become the biggest and most powerful being on the planet. I can't see any way that it wouldn't. And it would be there and able to battle maybe these Thunderclasts directly or do something incredible. So a big prediction is that that dragon becomes the biggest creature in the land and gets busy defeating some other large creature under Odium's control. So, of course, we get a lot of Venli's story as well. Venli bonds her spren, and her spren, Timbre, manages to like get control over the void spren inside of her. So she is now a bit of an ace in the hole, and she recognizes that her story is a negative story for Odium, the story of how the listeners rejected their gods and lost those forms of power, but ultimately lived, a free life until the humans decided to attack them after the assassination of Gavilar. So, of course, her destiny is to do the same thing, but maybe in a way where they don't have to give up the storms of power. She's obviously going to lead the Knights Radiant, but in the version that is the Parshendi. So that's going to be super interesting. I don't particularly like Venli. I don't know what it is about her. I think it's probably the interactions that she used to have with her sister, Eshonaya, before her death, and how she was kind of the one that pushed them towards where they're at now. But yeah, I don't see any world where she doesn't become like the leader of the free singers long term and teaches maybe a few of the others to bond spren also. So I can't see any world that she doesn't become that person. I need to know, because I don't know, but I will find out in further books, how and why did the spren initially leave the Voidbringers? Because it's now known that the humans brought Odium with them, and then Odium kind of became the god of the Parshendi. And the spren obviously must have used to be with the Parshmen. So what happened, and why was there that swap? Where did honor come from? Was cultivation already here? Surely some of the singers must have betrayed everybody else and accepted Odium into their hearts when maybe the humans had decided not to, because we've already had the bombshell that the humans came from somewhere else and they are the invasive species, which kind of puts like the moral high ground on the Parshendi, right? However, the Parshendi are dominated by Odium, and did they accept that? Was there like one or two of them were like, no, we want Odium, and he let them into the heart of the others, and that's why the spren abandoned them? I feel like the moral obligation and high ground is going to swing back towards the humans, and maybe that's the reason why. And of course, we don't really know what happened on the planet with the humans previously. Why did they have to leave? Who destroyed the planet? Was it Odium? Maybe. Does he want to destroy things in the same way Ruin does? I don't know. He just wants hatred and passion. I don't know if he necessarily wants everything destroyed. So obviously that's going to be something we figure out at a later date. So Kaladin, a little bit of Teft, and Rock completely defeat Amaram. Amaram, who had like ingested one of the Unmade, finally he is destroyed, and it was very, very satisfying with Rock casting that arrow into his heart, and Kaladin getting the revenge that he so desperately wanted and deserved as well. So good riddance to Amaram. He was a good character. He believed himself to be doing the right thing. Sometimes a little bit morally grey, and everyone accepted that he was fantastic at what he did. So I actually will miss him as a bad guy, but I'm very, very glad that he's dead and gone. Also, Kaladin had some really, cool lines for Amaram just before he was killed. So I read them a few times over. They were really great. So Amaram gone. Moash, big problemo. So Moash, he kills Jezrien with this knife, and this knife is interesting. What makes this knife special? Is this knife something that was maybe used at the splitting of Adonalsium? I don't know. I don't know if it's powerful enough to do that, but Jezrien gone, and I would guess they're going to try and kill all of the other heralds to try and get rid of the Oath Pact completely, meaning that they can't be locked back in wherever place they get locked before one of the heralds gives up. So I would guess moving forwards we see the concerted attempt to slowly kill each of the previous heralds until Dalinar and the other two bondsmiths manage to get together and create a brand new pact. So that will be interesting. But yeah, so Moash not only kills Jezrien, but he also gets a herald's sword, meaning he's like ascended to become one of the more powerful people in Odium's army. So the future for him, surely a final showdown with Kaladin. That has to be the final showdown for Moash. And he sucks, does Moash. So I'll be excited to see him be defeated. And talking of heralds, we have Taln and Ash now with our squad. If Taln can get, not sober, but if he can get clear-headed, there would be such a useful asset. And I'm sure that Taln, long term, especially him, is going to be extremely useful. There's a lot of talk of how he was the only one who wasn't a king. So I would guess he will be useful long term and maybe make some kind of final stand again. As the other heralds have killed and destroyed, he may be the final one standing. It wouldn't surprise me. What else? Jasnah becomes queen. Lord help everybody now. Not only does she have the intelligence and absolute badassery, if that's a word, but she now has the mandate as the queen of everything. Well, the queen of the Alethi. We see a section where she has like geometric shapes around her. She can straddle Shadesmar and the realm where everybody lives, the cognitive realm, or is that Shadesmar? The real realm as well. And she moves between those with ease, and I'm hoping she's going to teach Shallan how to do that. She is by far the most proficient and effective of our characters that we have. She's awesome. I love Jasnah. Do I want a whole book centered around her? She can be very cold and calculated. I don't know how difficult the book would be. I think it would be a lot of just her coming to the right conclusion and doing it. However, there was a lot of mention of her having an illness when she was younger that caused her problems and meant that family maybe wasn't, as close as she thought. There was some mention of that. So I'm sure there's that to explore in case we do get the book about Jasnah. Adolin and Shallan, they finally seem to be there. Adolin is a better man than I, because Shallan essentially admits that she has split personality disorder and that one of her personalities is in love with Kaladin. So I personally would have a few more questions, but he weren't too bothered about it. So yes, I'm glad that worked out for them too. And speaking of Adolin, the Deadeyes, his sword saving him, and then his ability to almost speak to that sword long term, that seems to defy what we know about the Spren. So yeah, I don't know where that's going, but it's going in a direction that's brand new, and I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes a Knights Radiant, or at least has a closer relationship with that Deadeyes or sword or Spren than anyone thought was possible before. So on to the interesting stuff. Renarin. Renarin seems to have the ability to see into the future, and his ability seems to negate the ability of Odium to see the future around him. So this means that Renarin must be crucial to all future plans or be killed pretty soon. And I don't think he will be killed pretty soon, because there's so many chances to kill Renarin, and none of them have managed to go forward or work. And he's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Plus he can heal people around him. So yeah, Rennin is going to be really key to these problems. And then on to Taravangian, the most interesting character in my book. He comes clean with some of his crimes, so to speak, with Dalinar. He felt like he needed to be able to turn the corner. And Odium presents himself to Taravangian, and he says to him that the diagram is very, very, very good, which kind of diminishes Odium and puts Taravangian up, in my opinion. Not above Odium, not yet, but getting close. And it just shows that Taravangian on his day is maybe smarter than Odium is. And Odium mentions that he didn't even use, what did he say? He didn't even use, was it foresight or fortune? What is fortune? And it was capitalized. What is fortune? Is that another being? Is that another shard? Is that another something or power that we don't know about? It has to be. So I'm excited to figure out what that is. And I think Taravangian has kind of like outsmarted him once, because during that chapter, he'd written down the deal that Odium had made, and the thing that would, like, that's stopping Odium from moving forwards. The fact that he'd made the deal with the champions already, he doesn't want that to happen. I think Taravangian will figure out how to use that to his ability. And 2 videos ago, or the last video, I predicted that Taravangian was going to get the body of one of the shards so that he can continue to live, because he's old as they come and his body is failing him. I think that he now might manage to get Odium's. He's not. I don't think he'll get cultivation. Cultivation is not involved in it. It could be cultivation. It's not going to be honor, because I think Dalinar now has honor's shard, but I'm not certain, because he seemed kind of normal afterwards. Maybe he just restored some of honor's power. That wasn't completely clear, but I'd be surprised if he didn't have honor's like body now, or however that works. Taravangian can take Odium's or cultivations, but I'm leaning toward Odium, because Odium is way too cocky. His foresight thing has won him everything in the past, and now they have Rennin, and they have Taravangian, kind of. He's kind of on the other side, who on some days may be smarter than Odium and outsmarting his foresight. So, big prediction, but that's what I've got. Also, we figure out that Taravangian had asked for acumen and compassion, and what he gets is either one or the other. So it wasn't just like intelligent, not intelligent, it's like super intelligent or compassionate. And I don't know if that's what they meant, but either way, as he doesn't have the acumen, he becomes more compassionate. So that was cool, very poetic. We also figure out that Gavilar made something similar to what Dalinar did with the thrill close to his death. What's inside of there? I don't know. Could it be a different Unmade? Could it be a different spren? Could it be? It could be anything. And I don't know what it is, but that is something to keep an eye on. And I don't think it is an Unmade. And I don't think it's a spren. I think it's something else, which I don't know yet. Finally, Wit bonds the spren that a Lokar was about to bond. Does this mean that spren was extremely important? I don't know. The Fused were looking for it. They were turning the city upside down. It must have been very important, or maybe it was really important that Wit didn't bond it. So now that Wit did, I love how involved he is in this story. This is clearly the flagship, because Wit pops in and out of the other stories, and in this one, he is desperate for them to succeed. But anyway, I have to go. Those are some of my predictions moving forwards. Oathbringer was a lot of fun. I'm going to take a small break from the Cosmere. I'm going to go back to reading a little bit of Joe Abercrombie up here. I've bought one of his standalone books, and I'll do some videos on that. But I will, of course, be back to the Cosmere. I think there's a standalone book that I need to read before the next one, and I'm sure everyone will tell me what it is in the comments. So I'll be back. If you like these types of videos, I did this for the Wheel of Time. I've done this for some Dan Abercrombie. I've got loads of stuff on my channel. I would love for you to subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to become a member, that would be great also. I love reading books. I will see you on the next one. Thank you very much.